you doing down in the basement with your sister?
How's it going, AP Psych class? And welcome back for another Flex Time review. Now, I can only imagine you were all wondering what it is you just saw before I popped up on the screen. Well, that old video was how I was taught about what we are learning about today, which is Sigmund Freud's psychoanalytical theory on personality. More specifically, we will be focusing on how the id, ego, and superego shape who we are. If you would like to watch the weird Freud video, you can find a link to the video in the description box. Also in the description box, you will find a link that brings you to a worksheet for those of you who would like to follow along. And with all of that out of the way, let's get started. To understand Freud's psychoanalytical theory, it is important to understand how psychologists define personality. According to psychologists, personality is an individual's relatively consistent patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving. Some people are going to be outgoing and loud, while others might be quieter and more reserved. But what is it exactly that shapes the way we think, feel, and behave? Well, according to famous 20th century psychologist Sigmund Freud, the main forces that make up our personality are going to be the influences of our unconscious mind as well as our childhood experiences. We are going to see that Freud has a rather pessimistic view on human nature, and we are going to find out exactly why as we take a class field trip back in time to get a quick tour of the life of Sigmund Freud. And our method of travel will be a magic school bus. Well, maybe not a school bus, but a bus nonetheless. Hello and welcome to the Stedman Express. I kindly ask that you strap in. It's gonna be a bumpy ride. So let's set the time to May 6, 1856, and the location for Freiburg, Moravia. And we're off, baby! Welcome to Moravia. In the present, we would be located in the Czech Republic. On this day, in the quiet town of Freiburg, Sigmund Freud was born a baby. 4 years after his birth in 1860, Mama and Papa Freud packed up the family and moved to the city of Vienna in Austria, where Freud would live for a majority of his life. In 1873, Freud began studying medicine at the University of Vienna, where he would receive his doctorate in neurology a few years later in 1881. And if you did the math, yes, Freud was only 21 when he received his PhD. While Freud was obtaining his doctorate, distinguished Austrian physician Joseph Breuer was conducting his talking cure method on his patient Anna O. from 1880 to 1892. Seeing how Breuer could simply ease or relieve psychological symptoms by allowing the patient to freely express their pent-up emotions and feelings made a deep impression on Freud and is what gives Freud the foundation for his theory on psychoanalysis. Freud and Breuer even go on to co-author a publication together in 1895 titled Studies on Hysteria, which main highlight was the case study of Anna O. Now, there is much more to Freud's story, but for the sake of time, we are going to end it here and head to the next destination of our field trip. Now for our final destination, I hope you brought a coat because it's going to get a bit chilly. Now you may be wondering why I brought you out to this barren Antarctic wilderness. Well, you are about to find out. As I've already mentioned, Freud founded the Psychoanalytical School of Psychology. In regards to personality development, psychoanalysis states that our personality develops as a result of our unconscious influences and childhood experiences. Freud is going to look at personality development as a result of conflicting psychological forces that dictate our behavior. These psychological forces are going to operate in 3 different levels of consciousness, which is going to be the conscious, the preconscious, and the unconscious. Our conscious level of awareness is going to include all of the thoughts, feelings, and sensations that we are currently aware of. Our preconscious is going to contain information that we are not currently aware of, but easily can bring to our conscious awareness, such as our memories. Our third and greatest force, according to Freud, is going to be the unconscious. The unconscious mind is going to contain thoughts, feelings, wishes, and drives that are operating below our level of conscious awareness. Freud believed that our unconscious mind was filled with feelings and motives from our past childhood experiences, and that they play a huge role in who we are. Now notice how the conscious mind is represented as our sky, the preconscious as the shallow water, and the unconscious as deep water. Well, I actually did this on purpose. Now I want you to imagine that your mind is an iceberg. In following Freud's theory, the very tip of the iceberg represents our conscious mind. The shallow water will represent our unconscious mind. And just like an iceberg, the most important and largest area is going to be hidden beneath the surface, with the bottom representing our unconscious mind, completely submerged in water. In Freud's view, Our personality is a result of a conflict between our biological impulses and the internalized social restraints against them. Our personality forms as a result of our efforts to resolve these conflicts. So, let's break down our iceberg model further into 3 sections. These 3 sections are going to represent Freud's personality constructs of the id, ego, and superego. From birth, we have our id. The id is the part of our personality that, according to Freud, strives to satisfy basic sexual and aggressive drives. The id operates on the pleasure principle, meaning it seeks immediate gratification. Think of a newborn baby. As soon as it is hungry or needs a diaper change, it starts freaking out immediately. I can actually vouch for that one. The id is going to be completely unconscious, as represented in our iceberg as being submerged completely underwater. As we age, the next construct of personality, the ego, develops. The ego is going to be the largely conscious executive part of personality that mediates among the demands of the id, superego, and reality. In order to meet the instinctual needs of the id, the ego operates on the reality principle. This is just when the ego seeks realistic ways to satisfy the id's impulses in an attempt to bring long-term pleasure over short-term pain. On our iceberg, the ego can be shown here at the top, showing us that it is mainly conscious, but with some unconscious aspects. Around the age of 5, Freud states that our third and final construct of personality emerges. The superego is the part of our personality that represents internalized ideals and provides standards for judgment and future aspirations. The superego is going to strive for perfection. It judges our actions and produces either positive feelings of pride or negative feelings of guilt. The superego is kind of like that little voice in your head telling you something might be a bad idea. Someone with a strong superego might be virtuous yet guilt-ridden, while someone with a weak superego might be more self-indulgent and remorseless. The superego is going to sit beside the ego on the iceberg, being both conscious and unconscious components of our personality. The id and the superego can be seen as opposing forces, the id wanting its needs met immediately, while the superego makes sure they are met in socially acceptable ways. It is going to be the ego's job to mediate between these 2 opposing forces in order to fulfill the needs of both. Now, I know this can all be a bit confusing, so I'm going to try and simplify it for you. And since we are in the virtual world, we will be doing it with another scenario. The scenario you are going to watch is going to help you with understanding Freud's theory. So sit back, enjoy the scenario. I'll meet you back in the classroom after. Finally, time for lunch.
Oh man, did I forget my lunch again?
Oh, dang. Ooh, wait, what do we have here?
Mitch's lunch. Do not eat.
Bro, you know that's a bad idea. You can't just go stealing people's lunches. That is not cool.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
Don't listen to that dweeb. Take Mitch's lunch. Dude is a nerd. He'll never know it was you. Seriously? You're gonna let this clown convince you? Your mother would be so disappointed. My man, look at that box. Look at how good that Philly cheesesteak is. Now imagine biting down into that delicious sandwich as the meat and cheese send your taste buds on a magical journey.
Well, I guess you do bring up a good point.
Come on, man, just go to the cafeteria. Stealing is wrong. The cafeteria food sucks. We all know it. Well, we're wasting time. You have to decide. Lunch is almost over. Let's go, my man. We don't have much time.
Stupid Mitch.
Welcome back to our virtual classroom. I hope you enjoyed the scenario. Now, this is probably my favorite way to teach Freud's theory on personality, by using the classic shoulder angel and shoulder devil. I'm sure each and every one of you have seen a TV show or a movie where the main character is faced with a questionable decision, and a little devil and angel pop up on their shoulder telling them what to do. Well, this is going to be a great way to look at Freud's theory. In our scenario, the ego is represented by me, the id represented by the devil, and the superego represented by the angel. Notice how in the scenario, both my shoulder angel and shoulder devil were telling me to do completely different things. The devil, or id, telling me how good the food looks and telling me how tasty it will be, and that Mitch will never know, while the angel or superego is telling me that it's not right to steal and not a nice thing to do. Both of these forces are going to try to influence the decision I make. So in conclusion, Freud believes that our personality forms as a result of these three constructs interacting with one another. Now, there is much more to Freud's theory on personality, such as his psychosexual stages of development and defense mechanisms, and we will be going over those in some future videos. I also do go over some of these concepts in the Unit 7 review video on motivation, emotion, and personality. That link can also be found in the description box. So that does it for our lesson on the id, ego, and superego. If you did enjoy, please feel free to like and subscribe. It is always appreciated, and it will keep you up to date with all of my videos. On that note, I will see you all next time. Peace.